Okay, guys. Well, it's really, really nice to meet you all. This is it's unusual for me because I don't you normally work in this sector of the industry at all. So it's very, very interesting for me to meet these mysterious artists that we only ever well, we never really see actually, and certainly not here in the UK. So you are the kind of secret stars of this industry. So welcome to this. Special online conference, the Mojo Nation Play Creators Conference. What we're going to do, my role here is purely just to ask the questions. You guys are in focus. So I think the best thing that we can do to start off with is for everybody to introduce themselves. And so if you could introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and what you're currently working on. And if we could start with, I'm just going to go around the order on my screen. If we could start with Kenny.
Okay. Am I on? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kenny Kiernan. I'm a freelance illustrator. I do a lot of toy and game stuff, among other things. And the toy and game stuff is what we're here talking about today. And that's kind of my focus and kind of my favorite stuff that I like to do. And I was born and raised in New York City. I now live in Scranton, Pennsylvania, for the last few years, working remotely. And as David and I were just talking about before we went live here, this whole thing, now the whole reason this is all virtual is because of the whole pandemic situation. Yep. And which is weird for everybody. But for me, my own work habits, it hasn't changed anything because I work from my home studio here all the time anyway. So as long as I have to work on, right? Probably the same for you guys, right? Yep, because I rarely meet a client in person. It's, most often it's done by email, not even a Zoom call or anything like that, and phone, But so yeah, I've been working from my home studio for a long time. I've been in the business for like 20 years, and that's me. How about the rest of you guys?
Thanks very much, Kenny. I guess it's the same for all of us. Illustrators in a way, we're in a quite lucky position with this lockdown because most of us are used to working in this kind of setup remotely, working from our home offices or our secluded offices somewhere else. So, okay, let's move on to Frankie.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm originally from Boston. I'm a freelance illustrator, but I'm currently living in Rhode Island, small little city, town, state, town. So anyway, I'm currently working on comic book stuff. I got commissioned to do some work on a comic book, issue 3 of that. And as that's going on, occasionally I still get stuff like some toy stuff getting slided in and stuff like that.
Surprisingly, what was the title? Issue 3 of what?
Issue 3 of Martian Trump.
Wow.
That's one of the comic book projects I'm working on. It's cool. It's like a satire, It's so weird because in one degree, I wrapped up some work on a comic book dealing with kajus, giant creatures and robots and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden, I'm back to like this satirical kind of
another comic book. Yeah. Again? Another monster. Right.
Yeah. No. Exactly. And then and so and I also did some stuff for these Hong Kong toy makers. I'm getting contacted by a lot of guys from Hong Kong who are these independent toy makers who've seen my artwork, and so they've been hiring me to do title card artwork, which is awesome because it's like these amazing, beautiful scenes of action and monsters and stuff like that. So it's just a bunch of stuff. But the comic book stuff is the current stuff right now, though.
That sounds amazing. And finally, Carlos.
Hey guys, my name is Carlos Mendoza, and it's good to be with you guys, man. It's Kenny, good to see you guys again. It's always awesome to share the screen with you guys. I'm originally from Los Angeles, and I just been doing toy designing for about 15, going on 16 years. I was doing toys. I worked pretty much for all the major toy companies. Both I've done freelance and I've also done in-house. The spectrum is pretty broad as far as brands that I've worked on, mainly a lot of licensing stuff that I worked on. My most recent one was Subway Surfer and SpongeBob for Alpha. But yeah, I think everything that I've done is pretty much led up to my next venture where I'm at now, which is I just moved to New Jersey. I'm a director now for the Spirit Halloween animatronics and weapons team. and just designing creatures and monsters all day, which is pretty awesome. And well, yeah, I just, it's pretty, it's like, it's a dream job, man. I can't explain to you how awesome it is to just wake up and draw monsters and crazy things. But I mean, it's, being an illustrator in this industry it's very unique because, being a director, you get to see a lot of the designs that we do, in a different light, you know what I mean? Especially because of the details and the attention to details that a lot of illustrators have, not only in lighting, but in, and composition and just proportions and things like that. It really helps out a lot in what we're going to probably discuss today. But I'm really excited. This new spot is really awesome. And, I'm here with my family. They just moved here as well. And we're pretty excited in this new venture. I mean, this is new for me in Halloween. So I'm in the Halloween genre now. And, but still, I'm just creating bigger toys that move. So, which is awesome.
Nice.
Right. Life size.
Yeah, pretty much the process is the same. So it works out a lot, and I'm learning a lot here. And so I'm excited to see what we do here. You know what I mean? And so toys was a lot of fun. I love toys. It's where my heart's at. But this new venture is just equally as amazing and important for people's enjoyment. And so I'm glad to be a part of that as well. So
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun, Carlos.
Yeah, sure is.
Okay, let's move on to question number 2. What was your first gig in the toy and game space, and how did an arts education help or not help prepare you for this? So if we could go back to Kenny.
Okay. So I can't even remember what was my very first toy thing, but when I started getting into doing toys, I signed up with a rep, an artist rep, an agent. We're gearing this to, this is for aspiring illustrators in the toy industry. So, you can have an agent or not. I mean, a lot. It's cool to get one if you can. It's kind of a hard thing to do, but it's doable. And there's a lot of people out there. That's a whole nother talk and all that. Although I do recommend it if you can have one and the terms are reasonable, because the terms vary. So I did that. And I was fortunate to hook up with a rep that did toy stuff. So early on, I got a few Hasbro things. Like I did a Monopoly Junior box cover, and I was like, "Whoa, that's cool, Monopoly! Come on, man, that's the ultimate board game, right?" Yeah. So this was like a kid. They started doing all these various SKUs of, different and licensing of the Monopoly name and all that. But in this case, this was a long time ago. It was a cartoon kitty kind of style that I was working in. And anyway, it was a kiddie version of Monopoly. And that was really cool. But now getting to your education question, because I don't know about you guys, but I am not formally educated. I don't have an illustration degree, but I'm self-taught. So that's good and bad. I think it's mainly good, because I've kind of followed my interests and I just taught myself, and you learn to kind of rely upon yourself too. If there's something I need to learn, go learn it. You know what I mean? It's not, it seems obvious, but not everyone does that. It's a thing to, it's kind of accomplishment to be able to actually act on that and learn how there's something I want to learn. How do I find that out? By looking at online videos and all that stuff. So I've learned a lot by that. I always could draw, and then at a certain point, I decided to make a career out of it. And my stuff was good enough that I hooked up with the rep. So I think as far as getting hired, if your work is good, it doesn't matter where your degree is from. You know what I mean? Because the degree doesn't impress people if your work isn't good. And if your work is really good, they don't care about your degree. You know what I mean? So the work has got to speak for itself, in my experience. The only downside to it, like I was saying, is that there's certain maybe fundamentals that I could have benefited from, that I could still just teach myself, that I think about, if I do more anatomy, life drawing, that would be cool. Of course, nobody can argue that. Of course, that could only help you. You know what I mean? I never have time to do that, though. Luckily, because I'm busy all the time, so that's good. So I'm not complaining about it. So that's my take on that whole thing. That was my first job, and the education thing, though. I think, be confident in your work. You do not require formal education to get work in this industry, in my opinion. I see Florida.
Of course, that Monopoly thing, that's a pretty crazy job to get as your first I mean, that's like a major
Yeah,
leap.
it was an early toy industry job. Yes, I was floored by that. Yeah, and it was cool, and it came out good, and it was on the shelves and everything. So I was so happy about that. You know?
Yeah.
I saw
So
it somewhere.
it just demonstrates how sometimes being thrown in at the deep end is more or less all the education that you need.
That's right.
Yes, it's exactly right.
Cool, thank you, Kenny. And same question to Frankie, please. What was your first gig in this part of the industry, and how the education that you went through help prepare you for this?
Wow. Well, I'm in the same boat like Kenny. Like I vaguely remember the first gig, but I'll just say that I went to school. It was like a 3-year school called Butera School of Art. It was located in Boston, Beacon Street. And Butera School of Art was, in my opinion, more of like a trade school. Like I remember walking in and I got my I guess a degree, I guess, in commercial illustration. And I remember my teachers, the first thing they said was they were like, we're gonna teach you how to make money as an artist, period. They said, we don't believe in starving artists. And from that get-go, they were just like, we're gonna show you how to pitch yourself, how to sell yourself, how to get the job, how to get the assignments. Yeah, but a lot of my teachers, instructors, they worked in industry. And so a lot of the stuff that when I left school, you know, I know my first gig actually was with a production company for a film, for some films. But moving on, I eventually got into animation, worked for an animation studio that was in Brighton, Mass. And then that's closed now. And then I skipped over into advertising. So a bulk of my career was in advertising, working for, you know, major agencies in Boston, New York, one or two maybe out in LA and stuff like that. But, you know, because I also had a rep agency too. I had an actual rep agency that was in New York. So I did a lot of stuff through them. And then who knows who I was working through them, you know, whatever. But anyway, my first gig was through this, God, it was like a production. I want to say it was a small agency, and they contacted me to do some concept art for this. What was it? It was going to be like a, I don't know, trading card or action characters or whatever for Hasbro called Magnami. And I vaguely, it's like in my mind, it was years ago. It was like in my mind, I just remember drawing all these wild kind of character designs and stuff like that. And, you know, yeah, I got paid for it and everything, but I don't know whatever happened to the project. I don't know if I think they were trying to pitch to Hasbro for this property or whatever, or to do it. And I just don't know whatever happened to it. And that's pretty much what happens to many of the gigs that I got because of advertising or whatever. They call me in, I do the job. And then, you know, I'm very lucky if I can hear if it's gone to the next level, you know. But in most cases for this, it was just like, you know, I did a bunch of drawings and stuff, and they're like, yeah, this is for Hasbro, and we're trying to pitch this and whatever. Now years later, I actually did do some more stuff for another company for some more Hasbro stuff, and God, I wish I could remember. It was like some game or something. I know Bigfoot was part of it. Or something, I don't know. But again, it's just all concept stuff. You know, they contact me to do storyboards, concept art, and things like that. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. But again, my schooling really taught me how to just go out there and just, you know, that you have to pitch yourself. You have to pitch yourself. You have to have a sort of, you know, that, you know, you're not a starving artist. You can make a living doing this, but you got to get out there and hustle, and you got to learn, and you got to adapt.
That they taught that and made a big point to that because it's so huge.
Oh yeah, they stressed that. I remember like I think one semester they told us to go to the Museum of Fine Art just to look up, like, you know, they were like, yeah, we got this in our curriculum where you go and look at the old school artists like Goya or whatever. But they were like, you do that on your own time. You know, so it was like one day I remember going to the museum and I went and I did some notes and whatever, and that was it. But the rest was just, I remember standing up pitching. And they'll say, that sucks. Because I remember the days of taking my portfolio to the agency. Yeah, like having somebody, art director, look at me and go, flip, 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 flip. Suck, suck, suck. Okay, we'll call you. So I remember those days and doors closing. I remember one of my teachers, my mentors, once told me, he said, Frank, he said, this is how it goes. You have to have the mentality that one door closes, two more will open. He said, regardless what, you got to be your own cheerleader. Just believe it and keep pushing, and things will happen. And I'm telling you, I've been at this now going on 30 years.
Wow.
And I've never stopped drawing. Never stopped drawing. I've always clients, and I've drawn a score from across the board, from like, you know, RPG game source books to comic books to book illustrations to, you know, well, advertising and stuff like that. And I've always had that mentality, just like, you know, well, 2 doors closes, 3 will open.
Yeah, that's a great approach.
Yeah.
That's a really great approach. And I have to say, this whole thing about the romanticization of the starving artist,
yes,
crazy. And that stuff comes from a place of privilege. We were just talking, myself and some colleagues were talking about this a few days ago, how that stuff is, you know, it comes from that place of privilege where you literally just romanticize that notion of the, you know, you've got to be hungry for your art.
Like it's bad to make money.
Yeah,
right.
And that's the thing. It's so weird. Like I would be sitting there talking about money. I'm like, yeah, you know, and they'll just look at me. I used to have people be looking at me and they're like, well, but you know, it's about that. I'm like, dude. Well, for instance, I would say like at comic book cons and stuff, where I would sit there and they're not cheap. To do a comic book con and stuff like that, you're talking close to easily maybe $1,000. So you're sitting there at a table, $1,000. You have to try to make back at least some of that and then some. But I would just see people there and they're just like, yeah, you know, I'm just here for the, you know, just to connect with people. What I'm like, wow. So you're just sitting here and you got this grumpy look on your face and you're not selling your work. And so you just technically wasted $1,000. You could have just enjoyed it on the other side of the table. You could have spent that $1,000 and bought like figures, like me, you know, got figures and stuff like that. At least to be, you know, instead of just sitting on the other side, it's like you're not understanding business.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just a simple case of survival, right?
Yeah.
We've got to survive. That's just the way it goes.
You want to eat, right? You want to eat.
I had a moment one time. I was sitting with Sid Mead, and we were talking about drawing. You know, and we were just talking about artwork and stuff. And after our dinner was done, I remember I gave him my sketchbook. I'm like, Sid, do you mind if you just sign my book? You know what I mean? I just always wanted to have it. And he did. He started autographing, and then he started doing these circles. I'll never forget this because it's in my sketchbook. Wow. He did these cool circles. He's about to start sketching, and then he just did a happy face, and he said, "Never draw for free."
Wow. There you go.
He said. I was because I was expecting him to go and draw some cool whatever.
Yeah.
On my sketchbook. Like I didn't ask him for it. I just wanted his autograph on my book, but. When he was drawing a circle, I was like, "Oh, man, he's gonna draw a car, or he's gonna draw something really cool." But he just literally drew a happy face, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, "What the heck?" But it's a valuable lesson. It's like, don't draw for free. It doesn't matter who or what. Just our skills are very, very, they're very important. You know what I mean? And I think that the sacrifice, the time, and everything that you've done. Can't just be given away. Just like a surgeon that studied for many, many years, you know what I mean, that has done and done so many amazing, put a lot of time and effort into his craft, right? And then he becomes the more precise surgeon that you can get. You want that guy to work for you, but you don't want him to be a freebie. You don't want anything. You want to pay him as whatever his worth to make the job right.
I dare you to go to a mechanic and ask a mechanic to do your car for free. I use that analogy. I've had talks
it's absolutely right. It's absolutely
I'll be like, well, I'm a contractor too. I'm a contractor.
Exactly.
Because art is fun, and cartooning is fun, and comic art and art is fun, and it's easily accessible, mentally to people. So they think it's just a frivolous thing, possibly, but they don't realize it. This is our job, just like any other job too. So we got to make our living, and it's very laborious and time consuming too.
Yep. I see that Hellboy figure right behind Carlos. That right there is an IP. That's money.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's you got to think in the terms that what's his name? Mike Mignola. I met him years ago, and I'm like, that figure right there, that's money. Comic book, that's money. It's IP. It's like that's worth something.
How do you guys feel about fan art as illustrators when you do fan art versus your personal projects or IP development? As an illustrator, because illustrators, we love to design and draw whatever is accessible to us, especially creatively. But like as creatives being in the field for so long, like how do you guys feel about doing fan art versus doing your own art, your own craft, your own IP or whatever?
I'll be honest. I've done a ton of fan art. I've done a lot of it. I think that it begins crossing the line when you're doing multiple, like you start doing t-shirt sales and things like that and whatever. I always try to slip something. Like, again, I work on different little projects and whatever, and I'm all for like trying to do your own IP and trying to push that. The problem is that you have the fan base that's so locked in. So say if you go to con, you go there and you got original Carlos, you're like, yeah, I got this character, right? And it's original and whatever. And so you're sitting there in that corner. I bet you're going to have somebody come to you and say, can you draw a Deadpool?
Yep.
And what do you do?
Yep.
I mean, that's the thing. I've had that. I've sat at cons and stuff like that. And my biggest thing, like, people know me from the giant monsters. Like, a lot of people, I noticed that a lot of people weren't drawing like Godzilla or Gamera, you know, the kaijus and giant robots and stuff. A lot of people weren't doing them. So that was my niche. Because I was like, oh, I'll draw them. And people were like, oh, wow. What? But when I would go to cons, I saw thousands of people drawing Batman and whatever, because that's what the fans want.
The fans want, yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I actually struggled with it for a while. Like, I didn't, and I got slack for it because a lot of people felt like, well, that's what people want. And, you know, they would rather get Wolverine versus your character because your character's not known. But I pushed through as an illustrator to just, if you follow me on Instagram, like I literally draw mostly all my own original art. Good. I built a fan base just on my art because I felt like, you know, like the masters before us weren't really copying other artists, you know, and so I felt like, hey, if Norman Rockwell can kind of paint his own and do his own thing and not have to copy someone else's, although, you know, there's a lot of artists that, like I said, I'm not trying to like, you know, knock anything about fan art, but it's just like, you know, I really like, and I'm a big advocate of intellectual properties. I'm a big fan of artists really pushing for the contribution to our industry and bringing new ideas, new characters, new storylines or whatever. But at the same time, like I also came to terms that fan art is a thing that is part of our culture. You know what I mean? It's almost like unavoidable. You at one point or another, like I just recently did a Earthworm Jim, you know, so a salute to Doug, you know, and so
that was really cool too, man.
What's that?
What happened?
That was nice. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that was super cool.
Thanks, man.
All right, I got to hook up with you on Instagram, man. I got to see this.
But that's the thing. It's like, you know, it was as an illustrator, like I felt like, you know, because I work on licensing and stuff like that, working in the toy business, you know, I felt like, you know, I kind of am giving an homage in my designs to the fandom of what I do. So it was almost like hand in hand. Of course, I was getting paid for it, but at the same time, it was like I really started really embracing like these brands and these properties, not to gain any type of monetary gain or anything, but it was more for like, what else can we do to these characters that is creative and unique and different, you know what I mean? And really pushing, you know, the boundaries of what these characters are used to seeing and stuff. So, you know, I teamed up with a few artists that are doing the same thing right now, but it's important. I guess it's part of the culture. And I think as an illustrator in our field in toys, it does help out to kind of explore the possibilities of a SpongeBob or you know, a Gundam or whatever, or you know, whatever the character would be. So
I'm seeing a lot. Well, that's when it goes back to like the stuff I'm doing for a lot of these guys from Hong Kong. I don't know, on Instagram, these guys are cranking out some of these figures that are like insane. I mean, it's like these really detailed kind of figures and stuff like that. And I'm like, whoa. So you are definitely, I think you are seeing more indie stuff starting to pop up, especially in comic books too. I think right now the whole industry, everything's going right because of this whole whatever this thing. Everything's being shifted. So I'm totally seeing a lot of stuff. Like I'm seeing indie stuff coming out and whatever. But I do agree. I don't think that somebody should just fall on just doing you know, the fan stuff. Like because even, you know, it's like in a certain degree it becomes too much. You know, it's like, oh, come on, because I don't think you will grow as an artist. You just become somebody who's just known for that.
Absolutely.
So you have to push yourself. Yeah.
I don't do fan art. Although when I was learning, I don't have anything against it. I think it's cool. But I personally don't do it. I'm always doing other stuff. But I, just like you guys probably, when I was learning how to draw and I was in high school and all that, I drew all my favorite superheroes and all that stuff millions of times and all that. But Frankie, I like what you were just saying, how it's so true that now, especially during the pandemic, is that everything is changing, right? Yes. And all changing over with 3D printing and the fact that can do the custom vinyl toys and all that. And now there's this whole big movement of direct to consumer, companies that instead of selling through Amazon are going to sell from their own websites directly. So yeah, man, in a few years, just like Frankie was saying, I can see that lots of other places sell action figures and all that. And, that's cool. That's good for us. I mean, more opportunity and, less barrier to entry, like, Hasbro being like the top and, these top guys. It's just a tiny little gatekeepers there that are keeping a certain number of gigs open to the few people that they let in. And these other manufacturers now presumably would be easier to get in touch with and get work from.
Well, look at the power of the internet. I mean, just like I told you that scene where I remember going to agencies with my portfolio and trotting right up, go in with a big smile on the face and just be like dejected, sent out. And that was in the 90s. So since the 2000s, you now have the capability to have your work seen by thousands, if not millions of people. Yep. Nothing stops you except yourself. And that's what I noticed with and I try to tell some of the young artists, I'm like, you have to learn to get out of that whatever that thing is, that introvert kind of way of thinking. You have to start putting yourself out there and stop putting out your best stuff. I'm so tired. I get DMs, man, from people who see my work and they go, hey, man, can you look at my work and you critique it? And all I see is a rough sketch or a head. Or I'm like, it's like you have to put out solid work, your best foot out, everything. I'm saying, full body, throw some environment in there. Show something, show the range of what you're capable of doing, and not just superhero stuff or whatever. Show ordinary people and whatever. Just show your range. Right. Every person that contacts me, I always tell them that, and all of a sudden I don't hear anything back from them. It's almost like they get sad because they want me to be like, oh wow, that's the greatest thing. It's not it's like I can't critique a rough sketch. That's a rough concept. That's a prelim.
Just you telling them that though is already them learning something. You know what I mean? Like to us, I hope. But I say the same thing: is that you got to promote all the time, promote everywhere, and there's all these different places to promote. Try all of them, and some of them will work, and some of them you will lose. Some of them will work better for you than others. Everyone gets different results from different kinds of places, depending on what your target is. But you've got to get the stuff out there, and you got to get it looked at. And then you've got to convince someone, or rather, the idea is for your work to make the impression to one of these decision makers that this person could be useful to me. And like what you said is that draw regular people too, not just superheroes, draw backgrounds like that. Because those guys are thinking, okay, this kid can draw superheroes good, but draw a car and a parking lot and, with the hot dog vendor in the back and all that stuff. All the other details and things that are required too. And if you just want to do superhero muscle pinups, then that doesn't get you the gig. I mean, unless that's...
And be conscious of your posts. I mean, let's be honest. No one wants to work with someone that they don't like or someone who they feel is difficult. Because I've told people in the past, I'm like, my skills, I'm hired for my skills. But another huge part of that is my personality. I'm the guy that comes in, I'm like, hey, how you doing? I sit down and talk. When I talk with art directors and creative directors, I will add what I can add. I say, hey, look, I'm going to crush this deadline. I get the job done. That was my whole thing. I was all like, I'm going to make this happen. And when art directors would hear that, they'd be like, this guy can crush deadlines. He has a good personality. That's a huge thing. If I look on your page and all of a sudden I start seeing this angry or whatever stuff, then that kind of deflates. You may be the greatest artist in the world, but all of a sudden they sit there and go, do I really want to work with this kind of person? You got to be conscious of that.
Big too, yeah, right. Being easy to work with, being reliable, and being easy to work with, and meeting your deadlines, or that, those are the practical realities. Yes. In addition to the quality of your artwork is, yes. That's right. So yes, so that's so huge. So that's our, to the aspiring illustrators out there. It's the work, but the reality of it is in the workplace is that there's the quality of the work, but then there's also how you are to work with. And there's older guys that have been around, and we've all worked with people that are jerks and people that So yeah, I know exactly what Frankie's talking about.
Yeah.
And so be Be
Yeah,
good.
no, it's cool.
I mean, really, it's just common sense, isn't it? Almost in any industry, anywhere you could say this stuff, and it applies to almost any
Yes.
sector of any industry. You know.
Yeah, but people still need to learn it, though. You know, it's
Oh, yeah.
true, though. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the fundamental things you need to learn very soon after you start getting into the industry, any part of the creative industry. So one thing that whilst we're on this industry topic, I really wanted to ask about this because I'm personally curious about it. Do you guys feel like you have sufficient visibility within the industry, and do you feel like your work gets the credit that it deserves? So maybe let's start with Carlos this time.
That's a crazy question because you know, it depends on the company, right? There's different companies that, you know, obviously, you know, they give praise to the team. They, you know, it depends on, you know, but there's sometimes where, you know, you work really hard. You know, a lot of us designers work very, very long hours, and a lot of stuff that gets done, a lot of stuff that gets, you know, put through. It's, you know, it's a lot of efforts and thinking that you have to put into it as a designer. Illustrators the same way. And so sometimes, you know, it doesn't always go that way. You know what I mean? And you just have to have that tough skin to just move forward. You know what I mean? And you got to just make sure that you understand that whatever you're hired to do, it doesn't belong to you. You know what I mean? And so it's a lot easier when you accept that. Even though some people might say, well, you know, I drew it though. It came out of me and this is my concept. No, you were hired to do that work. And so that project isn't your personal work. So I think that to get recognition or to get, yeah, it's always fun to get praises for work that you put into something. You know what I mean? I definitely do. You know what I mean? And so when I put in a lot of hours and you know, working on weekends and coming in early mornings and all this stuff to get this job done, yeah, you know, we're all human. We all want the recognition. We all want to know that we did a good job. It's just human nature, right? But at the same time, you got to also remember that you're doing it for the love of the craft as well, and don't ever forget that, because you as a designer should always just enjoy what you're doing. And of course, the money comes with it, so you're getting paid regardless. But if you're not enjoying what you're doing and you're doing it just for the hell of it, then yeah, I guess, you know, you can get a little bit warped over it, you know, and get bent about it. But I think that getting recognition for stuff, like I said, it comes and goes, and sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. And you got to have that understanding that, you know, you did the good job. And whether it goes in your portfolio or not, I mean, as long as the check didn't bounce at the end of the day, I mean, you move on and go to the next project, you know what I mean? And so, but at the same time, like Frankie was saying earlier, is like, it's your attitude, you know what I mean? And so your attitude about it, the way that you carried out with the client, if you just go there, well, hey man, I did this, and, you know, why, you know, it just, it's just nonsense. I think you should just like, hey, thanks a lot for the opportunity. Be professional about it. Always stick to professionalism. Don't ever try to gain more than what you deserve. You were hired to do the job. You did the job, walk away and move on. You know what I mean? And so if they give you praises along the way, kudos, whatever, amazing. That's great. You get a paycheck and a pat in the back. That's always fun. But it doesn't always work that way. And I think I've worked with companies before where, you know, I don't want to say any names, but like there was projects that I've worked on before that I designed, engineered, and like pretty much created this toy idea. And you know, it was well received, but they didn't know how to receive it. They didn't know what to do with it. They were just like, wow, this is a really cool concept. And it got to the point where like I kept doing that. I kept bringing new ideas, new innovation, new stuff to this company. And I remember that it got to the point where I was like, why am I wasting my energy and time and giving all these cool ideas to someone who's not, or a company who's not going to want to invest and put it out, when I could take it somewhere else where maybe I could even become an inventor and do it myself and maybe sell it out, right? And get the money myself. It got to the point where when I left the company, the product was made afterwards, right? And so once the product was made, it hit the shelves, it was selling, it was doing great. I get a phone call. Hey, so-and-so, guess what? This product went through, blah, blah, blah. It's amazing, da-da-da. And the whole team they were making money. I mean, everybody was rejoicing in that project. But I was already at a different company. This has happened to me twice. And they gave the patent designer to somebody else because
Wow.
I wasn't.
Ooh.
So
Yeah, that I
when,
could see. It's so
and
great.
so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
literally broke a toy that was my son's. It was my son's toy. And I created this thing, and I just re-engineered, redid this whole thing, replugged stuff, and did all this stuff. And when I presented it, it became this monster of a brand for them. And it was unfortunate because, like I said, it was something that I was told by that owner that I wasn't a toy designer. And I'm sure that whoever's watching this and sees it, I know you're going to know who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say. But he waved his hand in my face at one point and said, "You're not a toy designer, so I don't need to hear your opinions on things." But yet,
Wow.
but yet, but
Yeah.
yet, like I said, those are the things that make you tough in this industry, is to be able to tolerate those kind of things and negativities. Um, there was other companies before that also, I designed products as well. And then they're like, well, your designs are no good. You're a tier one artist. And I'm just repeating verbally what I was told. So I'm not just making up, literally, I'm a tier one artist. You're the lowest of you don't know how to design. I've heard it all.
Yeah.
And last year, again, to the praises of Mojo Nation, it was just like, to be nominated as Toy Designer of the Year last year was a big thing for me, because after somebody waving their hand in your face, telling you you're not a toy designer, and yet your name is on stage in London that you're the Toy Designer nominee of the year for a brand that you just killed yourself over, was a big accomplishment for me, because I felt like the recognition was given at the time that I felt was well deserved. I
Yeah.
did put in time and everything, but during that time, it's like I didn't appreciate that until I actually went through the fire and the rejections and the ridicule and everything that it went through to build me up as a designer that I am today. So yeah, the recognition is always fun. It's always great, but you have to learn to build that tough skin and not give up, because if you give up and just say, you know what, he's right, I'm not a toy designer, I didn't go to school for that. Man, I used to work in an insurance company. Just for your first question that you had earlier about how we got into the industry, I was working in an insurance company before. I was working on casualty claims. I just so happened to go work at Jada Toys afterwards. They gave me an opportunity, and they told me legit, and I always say this because I'm so grateful for those guys. They told me that my portfolio was the worst portfolio and sloppiest portfolio they've ever seen come through those doors. And the only reason why they're considering my portfolio and me as a candidate was because I knew how to draw. And that's why I'm a big advocate of people to draw. And it's not necessarily, like Kenny was saying, it's not necessarily your degree. It's not necessarily where school you went to. It's really about your experience. You know what I mean? It's really about what you can put on paper. And so I really felt like whatever happened to me during that time when I was growing in the industry, all that stuff just made me a stronger designer. And that's because I stuck with it. I didn't let those negativities impact my role in the industry. You know what I mean? I didn't allow it to become that. Now that I'm a director of one of the biggest Halloween companies in the world, it's a proud moment for me to say and look back and say, wow, where I came from an insurance company. Now I get to provide for my family by drawing monsters all day.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just a very cool moment, because it just becomes more of like, it becomes a true testament of staying true to your craft and then master your craft. You know what I mean? And again, not necessarily what school you went to, but really it's about, or what companies you worked for. It's really about how did you stick to your brand? How did you stick to yourself as a designer? You know what I mean? What did you do for yourself? How did you invest in you? And whatever, like I said, if you get recognition or not, was that investment for yourself? You know what I mean? What was it for? Was it for money, or was it for gaining experience and gaining that opportunity and relationships and building bridges and networking? Like, all those things are part of our process as illustrators and designers, And so if you're not doing that and you're just concerned about the money part and whatever, then you're probably doing it the wrong way, I think. Because networking is probably one of the absolute best things you can do for your business and for yourself is networking. And again, that all comes with proper structure of your understanding of the business. You know what I mean? Like, getting to know what the companies require of us as designers, like what they're looking for, understanding that. And again, just having tough skin, and just knowing that rejection will come and recognition won't always be given. And you just got to be okay with that. You know what I mean? And just walk away. You know what I mean?
Great answer.
Yeah. So.
Kenny, how do you feel about this? Do you feel like you get the recognition that your work deserves? Do you feel like, because especially with you, I mean, I think loads of your stuff is all over the world. It's in people's homes. People pick up your stuff. People see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Do you think that when they pick it up, they know the artist behind it? Or
I was at a it was so funny because I was at a SpongeBob grand opening of one of their experiences, and it was so weird because I was there, and I remember that one of the marketing people had mentioned to me that they were talking to some lady there, and some little girl wanted to get my autograph on one of the SpongeBob
Wow.
things and stuff.
That's cool.
And again, it was just kind of weird because I as a designer, you don't expect that from people, because I mean, obviously I'm not Tom Kenny, or I'm not Steven Hillenberg. I'm not anybody like that. I'm just a designer that worked on the brand. But to be able to get that recognition from the fans that love the art and love the toys and stuff, it's great. I mean, it's that part is satisfying for me more so than anything else. I think that's very satisfying.
right. And Kenny, how do you feel about this?
Wait, which part of the question am you asking me?
Still on this kind of question, I want to know if you guys feel like you're getting the credit, you're getting the visibility that you think your work deserves.
Well, Carlos said, yeah, I mean, that's serious. I agree with everything he said, and that it's, it's part of, you're part of a team. Typically, a toy industry job or a game industry job, you're part of a big team of people that people have been working on it before the job comes to you. Then it comes to you, you do your part. And then when you hand it over, it's still being worked on and put together and all that. So your part as the artist is maybe the most visible, flashy part of it. And that's cool. It's the cool part. I agree that's the cool thing. And I don't expect to get any recognition from it besides what I push for myself through my own promotion. And I only learned that from experience because, like I knew that during a regular gig, they don't promote you. They don't say, hey, here's a game in box illustrated by Kenny Kiernan. Oh, I had one gig once that they said, I'll give you credit on the back. But typically you're not going to get that, right? So that's okay. I'm not trying to be a famous box artist, or that's not what it's about. I want to be working steadily. I would like for the people in the industry to know me, the people that care about this, the people that hire toy and game artists to know, oh, Kenny Kiernan, yeah, I want him to work on my thing because I like what he did on this thing. So to that end, I promote my stuff, and I've been doing this for like 20 years, but only really the last few years that I really start promoting what the guys were saying before about promoting yourself being so important. I so agree with that, because I let agents, I've worked with several agents over the years, and for most of the past 20 years, I let them promote me, and I kind of relied on that because I was doing other stuff in my life. And I was like, okay, nobody wants to have to do that, or I didn't want to have to do that. I wanted to work and then have people call me, hey, can you work for me and all this? And the market fluctuates or anyway, my workload fluctuated over the years, to the point that it got, I was very busy, then I wasn't as busy, then very busy, and blah, blah, blah. It got to the point, though, that it went down, and I started panicking, like, wait a second. And I talked to my reps. I'm like, guys, promote me more. But they've got 100 artists, however many. They can't, it's an unreasonable request of me to promote me more than their other guys. And it's not really their responsibility to do that. They got to keep their business afloat. They got to promote all their people, including me, but I'm just one of their roster. So I was like, I had the hard realization, like, I have to do this myself, So I dove into the whole social media thing, and which I had avoided before, which I didn't like, and I thought was so annoying. And I was like, hey man, I have to do, besides going to every website I could find to promote myself on, I started doing this, and I just started doing it like Carlos was saying, like pushing in hardcore, and I started getting some good results from that. And I was like, okay, well, now I have a forum now, and I see that people kind of starting to recognize who I am. I did this. You do it in a cool way. Don't be obnoxious, just like Frankie was saying, too. You got to, even if it's remotely like this with a social media post, give yourself a cool persona that you promote as. So that's what I try to do, and that's what I think it's cool. You don't want to come off as obnoxious or anything like that. But you have to promote your work so people start to associate your name with a certain type of thing. It's, you know, a brand, if you will, I guess is what it is. Right? You know what I'm saying? And it's huge. And doing that for the last several years has worked out well for me. So I'm continuing to do that. So the recognition, I take it upon myself to. I don't expect to get any recognition except for what I can carve out for myself. So that's my answer to that question. Was there more to it? I forgot. I started rambling there.
That's awesome.
It kind of reminds me of like whenever you read about things like Motown records in the 60s, whenever like none of the musicians were credited on those records either.
Yeah.
So you have the funk.
Oh, right. Yeah. Good example too, because the coolest stuff, these cool musicians, and musicians know who they are because they seek that out. But your average consumer that just likes a Motown song doesn't know the names of any of these.
Exactly. Yep.
So the hardcore people know, but and you know, I guess the industry people know because those guys are kept working all the time. So that to me, that's the kind of recognition I would like. Yeah, but I push for it myself. And if anyone else wants to give me some recognition, hey, thank you, I'll take it.
Frankie, how do you feel about this?
Like it's important to to network with also creatives. You know what I mean? Like we were talking about this earlier, Kenny, in our conversation before. Is like, you know, surrounding yourself with other artists and other illustrators within your field, you know, so you can acknowledge, you know, new artists, you know what I mean, get familiar with new people. And that also builds a new network. It builds a new, like a mastermind, right? A bunch of people just in the same mindset, just growing together, understanding, seeing each other's, you know, flaws and struggles, and yet still at the same time see their successes and their, you know, their ability to create new content. You know what I mean? I think that to me, I love surrounding myself with people like that. And I think I've and not to be mean about it, but I've really kind of like pushed away a little bit of relationships that have hindered my growth in the creative aspect of things. Yeah, that's very hard to do, right? It's very hard to do because a lot of people think you're conceited, or, oh, okay, you got to a certain level, now you don't want to talk, or you don't want to. It's not that. It's just like, look, if you're not growing, I'm not growing. And so if we're not in the same mindset, then it's not going to work. And so because I want to grow, you know, all creatives should definitely circle themselves. And again, like, you know, meaning Frankie and Kenny, it just like as other illustrators, as we grow, like I said, it's like, you know, you just inspire each other, you know what I mean? And I think that's where I feel like it's where artists succeed, you know what I mean, is to be in that circle of artists that are just in the same mindset.
We not really same stuff. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that's important.
All right, let's move on to a different question. I'm really interested. I'm sure loads of students, loads of young illustrators are going to be interested in this one. I want to talk about process. So the first question around that, maybe let's aim this question at Frankie first.
What
tools do you use? Yeah, let's talk about tools before we move on to anything else.
Okay.
What are your physical, digital, whatever tools? What other tools are the tools of your trade?
Oh man, well, I'm more traditional, and that's one of the things that I sort of stuck toward. Where, you know, I tend to work with the pencil, pen and ink. Occasionally, sometimes markers. I'll have some markers and stuff like that. But and also, you know, coloring, digital coloring. But a lot of my stuff still hand to pencil to paper kind of stuff. I've had people ask me in the past, they go, well, you know, have you ever done vector stuff? And I'm like, no. What I would do back in the day was I would draw something because someone would like my style, and then I would sub somebody else to do the vector. I'd be like, all right, you do the vector, you clean the lines up and whatever, and then we'll do that kind of thing or whatever. But usually a lot of this stuff, people like my work because I have the old school kind of look. There's this grittiness to it. It looks like that old school comic booky kind of style and whatever. And so they like that. And then in advertising, I mean, they were more like, you know, can you bust out some storyboards and, you know, can you do some, you know, concept art or whatever, or layouts and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm definitely just traditional all the way.
Great. Okay. And Kenny, let's talk about your process.
And what is it, method or technique? So I typically, I used to draw pencil to paper a few years ago. I switched to my Cintiq that I draw. So now it's digital pencil on, you know, right on the screen. But everything that I do and everything that's on my website, it all starts off as a hand drawing, even though I'm drawing it on the Cintiq now, in Photoshop with a digital pencil sketch. So it looks like a pencil sketch when I send it to the client. So I draw I compose a shot. Let's say it's a toy box cover or something like that. So a couple of characters and then the toy in the middle, right? So I'm doing really scribbly, and I compose the shot. I work on my composition when it's really rough and scribbly. No one even would recognize what it is, but I know what it is, right? But where are the shapes? Where do the heads go? Where does the table, if there's a toy, go? Bang, 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 and move things around until I'm like, okay, that looks good. Flip it around. You guys do this? I flip horizontal and see if it makes sense the other way, or am I bent one way, which I do.
That's old school. You're going way, way back. That's old school.
Turn it upside down. I take it upside down too, Kenny.
Horizontal, and I find that I always skew something a little bit.
Wow.
That I do it so it makes sense left and right, mirrored, right? So that's when I feel I'm convinced I have a good composition here. So then I go over it a few times, tighten the sketch, send that to the client, or maybe I send them a rougher thing to the client. Get approval on that, maybe need to change it. I get them approving it, and then I'm either finishing it in vector, because the stuff that I do is either delivered as vector, line in color and flat color or gradations in vector, or in more highly rendered Photoshop. But always I'm doing a digital pencil drawing, then I'm rendering it in vector, maybe shapes or black line or colored line, so that it's more comic-y looking. Or if it's a more digital paint style, I block out the shapes in various gray tones in Photoshop, and then in Illustrator, in vector. Then in Photoshop, I bring it into that, and I kind of paint by. I have a weird technique that I developed that I add shading and highlights to the different sections, and then color. I'm sorry, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it.
No, this is exactly the kind of thing that we wanted to hear.
Then Adobe Illustrator, vector, and then sometimes it goes all the way to Photoshop, and I add textures and lighting and all that. But sometimes it's vector, line, and color.
Can I just add something? Because what I noticed is that, and because again with that the previous question, the thing that I noticed, like, because when you had mentioned, because I'm a little bit of both of what Carlos and what you were talking about, Kenny, where you were saying, like, when I worked in advertising, I felt like I was just part of the team. So there was no recognition in there. But when I started like working, like I've been freelancing pretty much my whole career. But when I stopped doing a lot of the advertising and just doing all this other stuff, like the book stuff and everything, I had to start developing myself as a brand, which is taking me back to why a lot of my stuff is still traditional, because there's still a demand for original artwork. Like there's collectors out there. And that's why I got in a conversation with another illustrator, and I sat there because he was like, yeah, dude, I do digital work. And this is a comic book guy. And I was on a podcast with him and stuff. And I was like, man, I really love your books and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah. He's like, thank you. And then I said, well, dude, you got any pages? And he was like, no, I do it digital. And I said, in my first thought, I said, well, I'll be honest. I said, that's how many of these artists made their money, the secondary market. Are you thinking about that secondary, third market, where there are people out there that will buy that stuff, even in the toy industry too, like the original, like, man, the He-Man drawings, or, G.I. Joe drawings and stuff like that. There are literally collectors out there that will pay money for that. I know it's tough if you're part of a company and the company owns that, but, in some degree, if you're somebody who's an independent and who's out there and you've created something or whatever, just like some of the artwork I've created, like the guys who I do work with, the overseas stuff, they're just like, they're just paying me just for the service. I still own my artwork. And if they're interested, then I can sell it back at a profit to them. So I always wonder, like, that whole thing, like there's still that, when things aren't going so, so great, and we've all had that moment when there's a lull, what will you have to be able to sell? Especially if someone comes knocking at your door saying, hey man, I want to, you did that piece, you did this toy and stuff like that. Do you have the drawing of that? I wouldn't mind, throwing a couple of $100 or $1,000 toward that.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, that's an important thing. Like I'm just to answer the question. I mean, I personally, like, this is what I carry around all the time.
Oh, good. There you go. There you go.
Like, it's a small one. It's cool. It's everywhere I go. I have one in my backpack. I have one in my car. And I have a little bag and I just carry it around. I do a lot of traditional work. And so I think, yeah, to your point, it's like, you know, being able to have the originals, you know what I mean, is a satisfying thing, because, you know, you created it. That was like straight up you. All the shading was you. Every drop of that was you.
Yeah.
Digital, I think for me, like I kind of work a little bit like both of you guys, kind of, where like if I want to get educated in my sketch, I do it on my pencil, with paper and pencil. Like I'll do it this way.
Yeah.
But if I just want to do something real quick, just to kind of get something out of my head, I'll go digital, because I know that I could throw away, delete it, go away, no big deal. I could save it out and do it some other time. But I feel like for some reason, like the traditional way of sketching a design or a concept, for me, I get more out of the sketchbook in traditional, because I get to learn about shading a little more. If it reads good on paper, it should read good in digital. You know what I mean? And so I think it translates pretty decent. So I practice a lot. I've gotten better at my illustrations digitally because all the time I've spent in my sketchbook traditionally.
Sure.
So, and that kind of goes hand in hand. So some people, I remember I had a guy one time say that those two are two different things. Yeah, to a certain point, but at the end of the day, the technique is the same. The way that you treat shading, the way that you treat, you know, your colors, your highlights, all that stuff is exactly the same. You just, one is digital, one is on paper. So I always tell students that anytime I'm either teaching a class, doing a workshop, I always make sure to tell them to don't abandon the sketchbook. You know what I mean? Because you're walking around with an iPad and then just doodling digitally, that's no different than being on a Cintiq and doing it in Photoshop. So what I'm saying is, like, get the grittiness of a pencil and put it on paper, and get the feel of the shading, get the feel of the line work. You know, you feel that. You know what I mean? And so I'll always be an advocate of the sketchbook first.
I've had artists where, you know, I've tried to commission. I was like, yeah, I like your work and whatever, commission. And they're like, well, I only work on the tablet. And you sit there with this look going, wow, man, you know, like, it's serious.
You know, it could be a generational thing. It's generational.
Yeah, it could be.
It's cool. And like I said, and that's no knock to anybody who walks around with that as a sketchbook, because it's okay. There's programs out there like, you know, what's that other one? Procreate, and there's Sketchbook Pro. Those are all ones that make you, it feels like a sketchbook, right? Sure. There's like tons of brushes on there that can give you that or simulate that feel. But what I'm saying is, like, you know, the fact that you don't have to go looking and scrolling down for another shader when you can just shade it on your own and control it on your own is a satisfaction. You know what I mean? That I don't have to rely on a brush to give me that feel. I created it on my own. I feel like every stroke that's on this paper, like when I draw this kind of stuff like this, all the details in here are all mine. Like there's no,
that's incredible.
There's no like, there was no brush used on here. There was no fat pencil, and it was all just my just spending the time to do it. And that time educated me so that when I put it in digital, I already memorized and know exactly how I want to shade this thing, and I mapped it out. So
but that person just lost money. I think that's what my point is. When you and this is a person where if you're out there and you're trying to get work, because I mean, when I got into doing what I was doing, I hustled. You know, worked in animation, whatever. I was like, I'll do this and that. But it's like if somebody came to me, and I've actually had that too. I had that once when I was at a con where this poor woman, she was running around and whatever, and she finally came up to me and she said, "Excuse me, can I ask you something?" I said, "Sure, man. What's going on?" She said, "Would you mind doing a commission for me?" And I said, "Sure, not a problem. That's why I'm here." And she said, "Could you draw this character?" And the character was like, he was some animated character from Nickelodeon or something. And I mean, you know, I had all my stuff with Godzilla and stuff. So I said, "Sure, I can draw anything." I said, "As long as I got my phone here and I can find reference, I can hook this up for you." And I said, and she was like, "Yeah." She said, "Wow, that's really great. You know, I asked a couple other people here and they said they wouldn't draw this character, or they couldn't draw this character." And it's just so mind-boggling to me that as an illustrator, that somehow you lock yourself down to one you know, one thing, like you just go, this is all I can draw this way. Where to me, I'm like, that's money. You just literally shot down money. Because another guy, like a guy like me, is going to be waiting in the wings and being like, hey, how you doing? I'll take up on that slack.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe like, I only draw robots, not cute little Nickelodeon characters or something.
Yeah.
I made a joke about one time. I did a joke. Somebody said that to me one time on LinkedIn, I think it was. They said that I always draw monsters and all this crazy stuff. But then on my next post, I said, see, I could do cute things too, because I also worked on Disney Princess. So like, I mean, it's like being versatile and being able to adapt as an illustrator, you know, it's like, I don't draw monsters all the time. I can draw wagons and little cute things as well.
I was working on GM. I remember doing stuff for I'm not a big vehicle guy. I'm just not. And I had to do GM. I had to do Gillette, Dunkin' Donuts, Jiffy Lube, Tampax. I mean, I worked on a campaign for that. But then also I got the chance to work on Transformers. Yeah. They came to this particular agency. I remember opening up the book. It literally glowed. It was like all the pre-stuff for the first Transformers movie. So they were like, you can't leave without it. And I was like, oh. But, you know, but I went through all that stuff. I worked on mailers. I'll tell people, I'm like, you don't get it. You know those mailers that you rip up?
Yeah.
Whatever. I worked on those. Those aren't the most fantastic thing. They're not like comic book stuff or whatever, but you know, that it opened me up to being able to get out of that whole frame of thinking. Because originally, when I first got into art school, my first stuff, I when they first were presenting, was comic book stuff. I was like, yeah, man, I'm gonna, you know, oh man, I'm gonna work for Marvel, DC. I was all like, and then once I went through the whole process, I didn't have any like comic book stuff. Yeah. Even my teacher was shocked. I was doing watercolor paintings, and then I was drawing all kind of weird stuff, and I started getting to drawing environments and stuff. And then after that, you know, it seemed like you, where I did other jobs. Like before I got to art school, I was landscaping, security. The biggest job, the longest job that I had was in the security. I was a security officer. And eventually the company was like, well, you know, Washington, you're really good. What's the next step for you? And they wanted me to eventually work up to become armed security. And I'll never forget my sergeant. He looked at me and he said, Frank, he said, why did you go to art school? And I was like, yeah, I want to draw. And so he said, well, then there's your answer. He said, you're not supposed to be here. That's
exactly what they told me on Mercury Insurance when I was at the insurance. This guy named Oliver would always come by and he goes, my desk would always be full of drawings and toys and stuff on my desk. And then they would say, why are you here? Like, why are you not working at an animation? They always say, because they associate all art with animation, by the way. That's so weird.
Well, you got lucky. I got funny books. I got funny books. Why are you working in funny books?
But it was just like that. It was just one of those things where that's how I got to Jada Toys. I actually flipped one of my cars upside down and I read the bottom of who makes this thing. Somebody makes this stuff. And that's how actually I started my career stuff. It was just really
see, that's initiative right there. That's initiative.
You know, and so I think, like I said, I think my story's for another time, but it'll blow your mind how things like unravel to that point where I got my first toy job. But at the end of the day, it just becomes more like, you know, just, I don't know, just all that stuff is just, I don't know. I don't even know what to say from here, but it just seems to me like, yeah, you're right. I mean, it just.
I'm very fortunate that I was young at the time. When I was young in my 20s, I did have a temper. I had a very like hot head about things and whatever, but I was very fortunate. And I always say like the universe put a lot of really good people in my path, and I listened. That was the thing about it. Like, even though I didn't seem like I wasn't listening, they would say stuff, the old schoolers, and they would stiff a stick. Some stuff might fly by, but certain things would just be like, bing, and stick in. And I would remember it, even to this day. You know, I'm going to be turning 50 next month. And I still think of this stuff. I still can hear their voices in the back of my head and stuff like that. And there was always this thing in me where they said, look, you went to art school. You have to make money drawing. Period. Your mindset has to be like that. Period. I have to make money doing this, regardless. And you get out, and then the next step is the initiative. You're going out there. And I love what you said. Surround yourself with people that are doing stuff. People that are practicing what they're preaching. Don't surround yourself with people who just preach and nothing happens. You know, you want to be around people.
Into our final question. Actually, that's why. Sorry to talk over you.
Oh, not a problem.
Yes, perfect response for the next question that I thought I'd jump in there. which is, what's your advice? What advice would you give to somebody who is wanting to get into your side of the industry right now, today? And let's start maybe this one. I mean, I feel like Frankie's pretty much just answered it. And Kenny, do you have any advice for young artists?
Yes. So I'll say kind of what we all said before about promoting yourself, being big. And you know what Frankie was saying before about someone saying, "Hey, you know, can you critique my work?" And he sends a sketch, you know, like a rough pencil sketch. I'm like, all right, cool pencil sketch, but that's not going to get you the gig. You know, can you do a finished thing? So my advice is, I'm talking about specific like job getting advice about building a portfolio, let's say. Because I'll pass along some advice that I was given a long time ago, which was good, was that, okay, figure portfolio as a general number. Let's say you want 20 solid pieces in your portfolio. So let's say you're going to go to a toy company or a game company. You say, okay, can you show them a portfolio of 20 pieces that are look like they're finished, they're good enough to be produced, so it's artwork. So this is like what you're presenting as finished. This is what my style would be if I did this now, if I got hired by you guys. And that you want to, it's a typical artist thing to show. We were talking before about versatility and the kind of work that you do, but also the techniques. You know, if you're like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, that's cool. I can do, you know, what Frankie was talking about, a watercolor thing, or you can do black and white technical drawings, or I can do, you know, cartoony Dilbert-looking cartoon stuff or Nickelodeon stuff. Okay, that all is cool to be able to do that. But for this specific gig, for a toy thing, you've got to show toy-looking stuff, because the person that's looking to hire you is going to be like, yeah, that's nice, but what can you show me that I can use? You know what I mean? So think about your target audience, right? So you say 20, so you, and all that other stuff, have 10 portfolios of all different kinds of stuff that you show to different people for different purposes. You know, keep all that stuff and develop all that stuff, because all of it's great. But for this particular purpose, to get work in the toy industry, see if you can get a portfolio of 20 pieces that look good enough to be finished, to be produced in whatever your chosen style is, but have them all have a consistent look. So that consistent look is the key. The reason being that the person that's going to hire you, this also applies, by the way, if you're going to a rep, you know, an agent, if you want to be represented by an illustrator's agent, they're going to do the same thing. This advice I'm passing on to you is passed on to me from an agent. They said, look, I've got to be able to sell you. I've got to be able to show a client, this guy can deliver this kind of work to you. And if this works with your company's, you know, brand, then now we got something, right? So Kenny's stuff looks like this. Here's 20 pieces, and they all have to look, it has to look like a cohesive body of work, so that you come away thinking, oh, this is what Kenny K's stuff looks like. Cool, I like it, or I don't like it, or whatever. It's not appropriate, or it is appropriate, but it's a thing. It's a branded style. Because if you show a disparate bunch of things there, they're not going to know what to make of you. And if they hire you, they're not going to know what they're going to get back. Whereas if you show them a cohesive bunch of stuff, they can feel more comfortable saying, okay, Kenny, now do this about a bowling game. You know, here's a fish that bowls. You know, how would you do that? Make it look like you're 20 pieces here, but now using these specific things, and they have a general idea of what it's going to look like. You know what I mean? So that right there, advice is huge, because that makes you useful, or at least someone that's in charge of hiring someone can evaluate your work and whether it fits their brand or not. Because if you give them a bunch of scattered stuff, they're never going to hire you, because they're never going to know what they're going to get back. So, and it doesn't mean that's the only thing you can do, and only, you know, a person that doesn't think without blinders on is going to be like, this is all this person can do. Anyone thinks about an artist, artists or creative people can do all kinds of different stuff. So you're not categorizing yourself only to the point of this one purpose of like to get work at this place. Here's my toy portfolio. What do you think? You know what I mean? So that, and promote everywhere, promote a lot, get your name associated with that work. And you'll start to build a name for yourself that people may have interest.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Kenny. Carlos, any advice for aspiring illustrators?
As far as like illustration for our industry, like I would definitely just encourage everybody to stick to your fundamentals is very important. Never stray away from them. I say this a lot. I think I sound like a broken record when I repeat this to students and people that I deal with. But fundamentals are key to our business. It's very important, from design, development to illustrations, you name it. Fundamentals are very key, from understanding lighting, proportions, understanding just the full spectrum of that, of traditional design. And I think that having your sketchbook with you at all times is important. Being able to sketch people in public, understanding the way people sit, understanding anatomy, understanding a lot of different things, because an illustrator has to be able to interpret real life, and they have to interpret it in many styles. If you do not understand life in general, you won't understand. If you don't understand the rules of life, you won't understand how to break them in your style. And so understanding that fundamentals are key, and not just because you finish school doesn't mean that it's over. It's never over. I've been doing this I'm going on my 16th year in the industry. 15 of that was in my toy industry. And I can seriously tell you, I mean, I still have a sketchbook full of anatomy studies, because I have to. I design creatures and monsters all day. Guess what? They have body parts, and they have facial expressions. I need to understand facial anatomy. I got to. And when you do an illustration like Kenny does with the kids' boxes and the kid toys, he has to understand how kids' expressions work. He can't have off the wall eyeball proportions. He has to understand anatomy as well. He has to understand how the body folds and bends and moves, and how foreshortening works, perspective. These are all fundamental things. And I think that when you lose that because you just finished school, it's the laziest thing and the worst thing you can do for yourself. And that's the last thing I'll say is, like, I put this as a perspective for the students. I don't want to call them my students, but students that I've had the privilege of teaching. I've always said this at the end of my classes. It's like, the future you needs you, right? So the future you needs you to work hard right now on the fundamentals they need later to get that director job, to get the promotion, to get the raises. They need you to start working now, because if you lazy out and you do not provide them the proper needs that he's going to need for that director role, then he's never going to get it. So your success relies on you now, right? So I think that's the key thing to take away, is that every illustrator, every designer needs to stick to their core fundamentals always. And that's true to anything that you want to do. That goes for car designers. That goes to anybody who's in design. Your fundamentals are key. It's the heart of what we do. And once you lose that and lose focus of that, then you're going to start seeing the suffering of your designs as you move along. You'll forget how faces are structured, how hands and proportions and body movements work. You'll lose that. It's easily lost. Just like a bodybuilder, right? When your bodybuilder goes into training, he's in the gym doing jumping jacks. He doesn't know what he's doing, but 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now, he's completely ripped. But you don't see that in the first 5, 10 jumping jacks he did, but it contributes to the future him in tournament, right? That's exactly how we work, right? So that's the key thing about fundamentals, is that you don't understand that you're just in the gym training for the tournament, and the tournament is that promotion. It's for that raise. It's for the next level of your career. And so I would definitely encourage you guys to just stick out with your fundamentals. And again, if you don't know it, it's free. Get a sketchbook. It's free. Go outside, draw a bird, draw the trees, draw the street, draw a person sitting next to you at the coffee shop. It's free. It's free. Education's free. Life is free. You can walk outside and draw it. There's no excuses for you going, well, I didn't take school for that. Well, you have a free, you have YouTube, and YouTube has tons of directors and instructors that can teach you that stuff. So there really is no excuse to lose that. So I would encourage you guys to stick to it. So that's my advice.
Awesome advice. Thank you, Carlos. And Frankie, finally, I know you've answered this a little bit already, but is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, these guys have hit on some major points right here. But my thought is just, again, try to look at the gigs that you're trying to get and stuff, but a positive outlook. This is more on the side of just like, don't get down if someone says no, they don't need you right now or whatever like that. One of the things I learned earlier on was I learned to write a lot of beautiful, responses back to, art directors and creative directors. I'd be like, well, thank you very much for taking the time to look at my work and such and such. And you know what? Give it 2 weeks later, I would get a call from that person. You don't ever want to leave this bad taste with the person or walk away stomping your foot and whatever, because it could be 1,000 reasons why you didn't get that gig. They might not be needing someone right now. They may not be needing your kind of style that time or whatever. So you got to always try to have a sort of positive outlook on these things. You know, it will happen. I've always believed that that we're not in a village. This is a world. And there are a lot of people. There are millions of people out there. If one art director says he doesn't, and I've had that, one art director doesn't say that they don't like my work, guess what? There's millions of others out there that may look at it and go, let me just look at this cat's work. So again, you just gotta walk into it with a positive outlook and stuff. Hang in there. Don't get caught up with all this stuff and getting, you know, you want to post a video, don't go online, don't post no video about disgruntled and all this stuff. And this is stuff that, you know, the art industry is a big industry, but it's a small industry as well.
That's right.
And you got to remember that when you go out there and you start you start representing yourself, people are watching, people are seeing. And the thing is that you may not get a gig because of some action that you might have done. So just be wary of that. I just say, just be careful, put your work out. Let's see your work. And then you yourself will follow, you know, but let's see your work first. You know, I like to look on artists' pages and stuff and just see their work, you know, instead of just seeing a bunch of other memes and things like that that has nothing to do with your artwork. Put your artwork out, you know, be proud of that. And then build up off of that. Me and thousands of other people are looking at that. You just got to be known. You just got to understand that, you know, and that's pretty much my, you know, my saying on that. I don't know what else to really say.
Great. That's some great words of wisdom there. Well, guys, I want to thank you all for your time. I'm sure the viewers are going to love this stuff. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you all for coming along and doing this. And I will see you guys somewhere again soon at some